You know, we spend so much of our time on this show looking at the big picture
Like the
and
macroeconomics, corporate strategy.
exactly the 30,000-foot view. But today, we're doing something a little different. We're zooming all the way in,
Right down to the shop floor.
all the way down to the one specific individual uh, who really holds the entire structure of a unionized workplace together.
The unsung hero.
That is the perfect way to put it. We are diving into a manual for the shop steward. Specifically, it's the IAM's guide, the key to becoming a successful steward.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be honest with you, before reading this, my mental image of a shop steward was, well, it was pretty one-dimensional.
Let me guess. The shop floor lawyer.
Yeah.
The person you go to when you want to yell about your boss.
That's it, exactly. That's the stereotype. I just thought the job was 90% arguing.
And maybe 10% paperwork.
Right. Yeah. But when you actually unpack this manual, you realize arguing it's a tiny fraction of the role. The reality here is much closer to being a, um, a diplomat, a social worker, an educator.
And an organizational psychologist all rolled into one.
That complexity, it just hits you right on page one. They use this diagram to visualize the role, and it really stuck with me.
The triangle.
The triangle, yes. You've got the union members on one corner,
Management representatives on another.
and then the union organization itself on the third. And right there in the center, connecting everything.
Is the steward. They call it the key link.
And that's not just some fancy title.
No, not at all. Think about the physics of it. If that link in the middle is weak, then the members don't trust the union doesn't really understand what's happening on the floor.
And management doesn't respect the contract.
The whole structure just relies on that one person to translate these abstract rules into daily reality.
Okay, so let's treat this deep dive like a bit of a training session. I'm the new recruit. I've just been elected steward. I've got my badge, and I'm standing in the middle of that triangle, probably terrified.
A little bit overwhelmed, sure.
The manual lays out 5 main duties. Where do I even start?
You start with the duty that, honestly, most people probably forget, or they think
Let's go.
it's already done.
Okay.
Duty number 1, organize and keep the shop 100% union.
Which sounds a bit, I don't know, redundant. I mean, if the contract is signed and you're in a union shop, aren't you already organized?
Physically, maybe,
Yeah.
but the manual makes this really crucial distinction between just being signed up and being organized.
So signing a card is one thing.
Right, that's just a physical act. Organizing is a mental state. The manual is very clear that it's not a one-time event. It's a continuous process of keeping morale up, keeping support and unity strong.
It's like internal community building. If you stop doing it, you just end up with a bunch of individuals who happen to pay dues.
Instead of collective force.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that cohesion is what gives you the power to actually do duty number 2.
That's just the one everyone expects.
The classic one. Handle grievances and enforce the contract.
They use the phrase policing the contract, which I have found interesting. It sounds aggressive.
It does, but it's more about vigilance.
Ah.
You're walking the beat,
Yeah.
you know. You're watching to make sure the rules that everyone agreed upon are actually being followed.
Okay.
But, and this is where the nuance comes in, you can't just be a cop. If all you ever do is look for violations, you become this negative presence.
Which is why duty number 3 is provide leadership.
Yes, and this is the hard one.
It seems like it. The manual talks about building a spirit of cooperation, encouraging people to come to meetings. I'm just picturing trying to get people to stay after a long shift to talk about bylaws.
It's a Herculean task. And that's why leadership is a separate thing from policing. You can't order people to be enthusiastic. You have to inspire it.
You have to connect the dots for them.
Which leads right into duty number 4. Educate.
The steward as the translator.
Right. You have to explain not just the contract, but the bigger picture. The source material mentions things like the MNPL, the Machinists' Nonpartisan Political League.
So why the union cares about certain legislation?
Exactly. Why support a community initiative? If a member only sees the union as a vending machine for raises, they're not going to care about the broader movement.
It's about moving them from what can I get to what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the 5th duty, which I found the most surprising and honestly the most human.
Advise on non-plant problems.
This is the first friend aspect of the job. It gets deeply personal.
It does. The manual explicitly says you need to be ready to help with personal problems, debt, family issues, sickness, addiction.
It frames the steward as a resource for the member's entire life, not just their shift.
And think about the trust that builds. I mean,
Yeah.
if you help a member find a community agency for aid when their spouse is sick or navigate a difficult personal issue,
That member is going to trust you implicitly.
and when a tough contract negotiation comes up, that member knows you have their back. It's not just a job. You're in it with them.
It changes the whole relationship from transactional to personal. And the manual argues this creates a critical window.
The battle for the first impression.
Yeah. It's fascinating. This part reads less like a labor manual and more like a guide on behavioral psychology.
It really does.
It says, if the union does not start as soon as the new worker enters the department, the company, not the union, may leave the first and most lasting impression.
And it points out that the new worker is uneasy and nervous. We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. You don't know where the bathroom is, who to talk to, you don't know the politics, you feel vulnerable.
And the company knows this. Smart management is going to try and welcome that new hire into the corporate family immediately. If the steward waits a week to say hello, the worker just assumes the union is indifferent.
So the tactic is the first friend strategy, immediate contact.
Introduce yourself. The manual even says if you can, get the supervisor to introduce you, which validates your role right there in front of everyone.
And there's a specific tactic I loved. It's so simple. The lunch invitation.
Ask the new worker to join you at lunch.
It's such a small thing, but you can immediately see why it works.
It breaks the isolation. The loneliest hour of a new job is that first lunch break. You're sitting there eating a sandwich by yourself, looking at your phone. You feel like an outsider.
But if the steward steps in, shares a meal, introduces you to the crew,
The bond is formed. You've signaled, you are one of us now.
and the manual also advises against, overwhelming them.
Right. Don't walk up with a stack of bylaws on day one and say, memorize this.
Be practical first. Show them the washrooms, the bulletin board,
Be helpful first, bureaucratic second. Then later, you give them the new member kit.
which has the Constitution, the decals, all that stuff. But there's one detail about the welcome letter that really stood out. It says to send it to their home.
Not to their locker,
Oh.
to their home.
Why do you think that's so significant?
It's a brilliant psychological move. It brings the spouse, the family, into the equation.
Ah, okay.
It frames the union benefits, the health care, the pension, the job security, as protection for the whole household, not just the worker.
So if the family sees the union as a positive force, the member is more likely to stay engaged.
It gets the union into the kitchen table conversations.
Okay, so we've won over the new person, we've established that connection. Now comes the technical work. The manual adopts the Boy Scout motto, be prepared.
And it lists the steward's tools.
Right, I was expecting a simple list like, pen, paper, a copy of the contract.
And those are in there.
But it goes so much deeper. For example, the seniority list. The manual treats this thing like it's a holy text.
Because in a union shop, seniority is basically the algorithm for fairness.
Promotions, layoffs, shift preferences.
Overtime allocation, all of it. If a steward doesn't have an accurate, up-to-date seniority list in their pocket, they are flying blind. You can't enforce fairness if you don't have the data.
The manual also lists things like job descriptions and grievance files, but then it pivots from physical tools to mental ones.
Hmm.
It says you have to know the paper, the contract, but you also have to know the people.
The emotional intelligence piece again. It explicitly says you have to account for personality differences. You have to know your supervisor.
Is this a supervisor who likes to be asked for help? Or one who gets defensive if you correct them in public?
Exactly that. Understanding the human terrain is just as critical as understanding the legal terrain. If you approach a defensive supervisor with aggression, you just build a wall.
So let's talk about when those styles clash. Grievances, the bread and butter of the role.
This is where a lot of new stewards trip up in the investigation phase.
Right there.
Because they skip it. A worker comes to them, they're angry, they're shouting about something unfair, and the instinct is to get angry on their behalf and march right into the boss's office.
But the manual says test for a grievance.
And that's key. Just because a worker is mad doesn't mean the contract was violated. The steward has to be a filter.
Otherwise, management stops taking you seriously.
You become the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
If you fight every single complaint, even the baseless ones, they'll tune you out when a real issue comes up.
There's a checklist here, the 5 points to prepare. It starts with listen, then test against the contract, but then it says investigate.
And it says, don't just take the worker's word for it.
That's a tough pill to swallow. You want to support your member.
Of course. But the manual warns that members, intentionally or not, often leave out the parts of the story that make them look bad.
So I got fired for no reason. becomes,
I was late 5 days in a row and ignored 3 written warnings. Precisely. So the steward has to check the records, talk to other witnesses.
you have to be a detective before you can be an advocate.
You do? Because if you walk into a grievance meeting with bad facts, you lose. And worse, you look incompetent.
Which leads to the union fact sheet.
A document for union eyes only.
It forces the steward to answer the 5 W's. Who, why, when, where. But the 5th one is the most interesting. What settlement is wanted?
You would be amazed how many investigations start without a clear goal. The steward knows something is wrong, but they haven't defined what right looks like.
Are we asking for back pay, reinstatement, an apology?
The fact sheet forces you to define the remedy before you ever start the fight. It's strategic planning.
And you never show this to management?
Never. That is your playbook. You don't hand the other team your playbook.
Okay, so the investigation's done. We have a real grievance. We have the facts. Now we enter the psychology of confrontation.
Right.
This is the part where, in the movies, the steward slams their fist on the desk and shouts, "This injustice will not stand."
And the manual basically says, please, for the love of God, do not do that.
It explicitly advises against pounding the table.
Because pounding the table just shuts down communication. This is a negotiation, not a boxing match. The manual lays out a few behavioral rules that are, honestly, just good life advice.
The first one is equal standing.
This is a crucial mental shift. Out on the floor, the supervisor is the boss. They give orders.
But in that meeting room,
The moment a grievance meeting starts, that hierarchy dissolves. The manual says the supervisor and the steward meet as equals. You are a representative of an organization, just like they are.
a meeting of diplomats.
Correct. And like any good diplomat, your goal is to solve the problem, not humiliate the other side. Which brings us to the saving face rule.
Permit the supervisor to correct a mistake without loss of dignity.
If you corner a supervisor, if you make them feel like admitting a mistake makes them look weak or stupid, they will fight you to the death, even if they know they're wrong.
Because people will protect their ego before they protect the truth.
Always. So you have to build them a bridge to retreat on. You frame it so they can fix the error while keeping their authority.
So instead of "you broke the contract," you might say, "maybe there was a misunderstanding of this clause."
Exactly. It gets you the result you want, which is the remedy for your member.
There's another rule here. Don't horse trade.
This is about integrity. You never say, okay, I'll drop Bob's overtime claim if you give Alice her vacation days.
But that sounds like a compromise. Why is that bad?
Because you just sold out, Bob. The manual is strict. Every grievance has to be settled on its own merits. If you start trading them like baseball cards, you're not enforcing the contract, you're just playing politics with people's livelihoods.
And it destroys the member's trust in you.
Completely. And finally, control. Don't make empty threats. If you say, we're taking this to arbitration, you better be ready to go to arbitration.
If you bluff and they call you on it,
Your power evaporates. They'll never fear your threats again.
eventually all of this has to get written down. Let's talk about the art of writing the grievance.
The manual splits this into 2 very different kinds of writing. Internal versus external.
For the union's internal file, it says. Write down everything.
Every single detail. Who said what? The messy parts, the rumors, the background context. You need that for the archives, for the raw data.
But for management,
Be brief.
2 elements only. The statement of grievance and the remedy.
That's it. Don't write a novel. Don't give them extra information they can use to pick holes in your argument.
And this is where the manual gets really specific about grammar. It warns against the super sentence.
I love the super sentence warning. It's checking that tendency to try and sound like a lawyer, whereas the party of the first part did henceforth violate.
It says if the reader is of the picky persuasion, they'll attack your grammar instead of the actual issue.
And it's so true. Legalistic jargon is often just a cover-up for sloppy thinking. The manual says use simple, descriptive words. The supervisor removed the machine guard. Simple. Factual. Hard to argue with.
There was also a tip about using the third person. Don't write, you treated him unfairly.
Right. The supervisor treated the employee unfairly.
It lowers the temperature.
It does. You is an accusation. It points a finger. The supervisor is a report. It depersonalizes the conflict and keeps the focus where it belongs, on the contract violation.
It seems like the whole theme of this manual is removing emotion from the process so the facts can win.
That's a great way to put it. Emotion feels good in the moment. Yelling feels good, but it rarely secures a win. Discipline secures wins.
So, if we step all the way back, We've recruited the member, we've investigated the facts, we've kept our cool, we've written a clean grievance. If we do all that according to this manual, we're a successful steward.
We are, but I think the manual is hinting at something even bigger than just success. It's hinting at stability.
How do you mean?
Well, look at the closing summary. It calls the steward a leader, an educator, a diplomat. It says they enforce industrial democracy. That's a big phrase.
Industrial democracy.
Yeah, it sounds weighty.
It means the workplace isn't a dictatorship. There are rules,
Hmm.
but rules are just ink on paper unless someone is there to enforce them. The steward makes that democracy real.
The source says wages and conditions exist because members worked for them, but the steward is the one who secures them daily. Correct. But here, for me, is the most provocative thought, especially coming from a union manual. It explicitly reminds the steward, management has rights too.
I noticed that. It says both workers and management must live up to the terms of the agreement.
And that's the aha moment. A strong steward isn't someone who just blindly fights for the worker, no matter the facts.
Right.
If a worker is late every day and violates a fair attendance policy that's in the contract, the steward has to be honest with that worker.
Because if you fight for a losing cause just to look tough, you lose your credibility for the fights that are legitimate.
Exactly. You're not there to destroy management. You're there to make sure the contract is respected by everyone, including the members. The goal isn't constant warfare. The goal is a stable, fair workplace where the rules apply to everyone.
That is a completely different perspective than the table-pounding agitator we started with. It's a role that requires just immense emotional intelligence.
You're the buffer, the translator, and the enforcer all at once.
It's arguably the toughest job in the plant.
But like that diagram showed, it's the one holding the whole thing together.
Well, to all the key links out there listening, thank you for the work you do. And for those listening who maybe aren't stewards, check your member kit if you have one. Or better yet, if you see a new face at work tomorrow.
Invite them to lunch. Be the first friend.
It makes all the difference. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.